Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to TBD, your Colorado Springs real estate podcast. I'm Rob Thompson, associate broker with the agency here in Colorado Springs, and I'm joined by my colleagues.
Lori Ristig, here at the agency as well.
Mike Ness with Total Lending Concepts.
And Nat Lampman, also an associate broker here at the agency.
Well, thank you all. Welcome back. So this week we're going to this week's topic is going to be things your realtor cannot tell you, and we'll throw in some things we can tell you as well. But before we get to that, let's talk about the market and then what's going on with the market. Anybody have any information they'd like to share?
Well, we've got right now 1,059 active single-family homes. Oh, no, it's not single-family. Sorry, it's just active in El Paso County.
So 1,059
Yep.
active.
So what price range?
That's all.
That's all.
Oh, okay.
I can tell you, as of last night too, there were 940 single-family homes in El Paso County. I ran those numbers. Also, last night for the same subset of data for single-family homes, the average sales price sold for January was $320,692 dollars.
Wow.
That's the average
That's
single-family
up from-
sales. It is.
Well, I saw numbers that showed like half of the active homes are over $400,000.
Yeah, that's where we're at. And the
Yeah.
average days on market is 36
So
for single
310,
families.
Is that what you said?
No, 320.
320.
Yeah, 320. Now, let's bear in mind that's for January, effective last night, based off 940 single-family homes in El Paso County. The actual, when we expand that to be, the 10. What was that number, Nanette?
1059.
1059 in El Paso. So 1,059 or 1,059 active listings in El Paso County. There are 1,337 in the entire MLS right now, so everywhere.
And a healthy market is over 5.
5 to 6 months, right? Yep. I can tell you too, from looking at the same data, there were 1,323 sold in December. So with in the MLS, so 1,337 active listings, 1,323 sold for December. We have still 1 month and a day or so's worth of inventory. So the inventory position, as we've been doing this podcast over the last couple months, has not changed. As far as market inventory, is pretty static. And you're right, a healthy market is 5 to 6 months.
Yeah.
A few other interesting stats I found interesting. Something I found out last night. The median value has been static or relatively static, plus or minus $5,000 since February of last year, with one outlier. In May, it was up in the 280s. So what that means is something I've long thought personally is that our market is held. The economy supports a $275,000 or below, and that was validating to see. Since February 2017, our median sales price for homes sold was $275,000, plus or minus $5,000. So that's our mean, I guess, would be when they say revert to the mean. I think that's yeah. So anyway, I think that's interesting because where I think this market is going is we've peaked. Our prices are peaked,
Yeah.
and that median value is kind of a weight that holds it steady, I guess, or an anchor maybe. That's a better word. So where do we think it's going from here? Are we going to see a sudden glut of properties?
I mean, spring is here, so
Spring is coming. I would expect to see a
unless
little
something
more.
changes. I mean, I don't necessarily think that prices are going to go higher just because they're kind of capping out.
To capping out. But hoping to see some more inventory.
But
for sure.
inventory is so low too. I mean, there's no reason why prices would go down if demand is still there.
Mhm.
That I agree. But that's where I think it's going to. Inventory is going to remain low. We've sold off. People say we're cyclical. All markets are cyclical, but but if there's no inventory to sell,
Right.
then there's just and the pricing is above our median value. Half the homes.
And I wonder how much of the inventory being low has to do with the rental market being so hot that people, instead of selling their homes, are renting them.
That's a good question.
Could
I don't know. That would seem, I could see that, but I could also see the other side of if it's an all-time high,
Yeah.
then do you want to hold on to that house, or you lock in your profit?
Sure.
I
Makes
don't-
sense
I
to
don't-
sell then.
Yeah, I don't know the answer. I know from anecdotally from conversations I've had, there are a lot of sellers looking at that. Well, it's such a booming market. Do we lock in the profit, or do we hold on to it for further profit? And then my statement to that is just be careful. You can't time
Yeah.
the market. Yeah, interest rates are still projected to rise a couple of times
And
this
are
year.
rising.
And are rising. Okay,
Yeah.
so every tick up in interest rate,
There's a little bit less home you can afford.
right?
Yeah.
So which provides another sort of anchor to or reality check to the market. So
Potentially, yeah.
potentially, I think just the very general math, not subject to or totally subject to someone's qualification, a 1% rise in interest rates equates to about a loss of $15,000 buying power at $250. So
About $100 a month.
yeah, so
Yeah.
so
It's pretty devastating when you're at a 250 range.
Yeah.
if that's your
Yeah.
cap, for sure, yeah. And then
Yeah.
when half the homes are above 400,000,
Right?
then I think the volume of sales this year is going to be historically low.
Mhm.
It's just that's what I
I
think.
had a client start out at a 4% interest rate. By the time he found a house, it was a 4.25.
Yeah, it's
He was like, why is it so much different?
just had over the weekend having that conversation with somebody too. Yeah, just
And it's interesting too, the inventory shortage. So everyone says, oh, we need to build more homes, but the homes that they build are not, they're all in the 300 and over
Yeah.
range for
Because-
the most part, because you just can't build them
Well,
and make a profit.
I
Or
don't.
maybe they know
So-
they can make a more profit if they build over 300.
Well,
What is that, you know?
Yeah, that's the thing right there. You can build them for lower.
Sure.
I know a general contractor. He and I are in conversations about building homes for
Mhm.
$250, and it's doable.
Yeah.
You just have to, instead of if you, the build cost $232, so you sell it for $260, and it's just the risk versus reward. Totally. So I guess I'm babbling, but the if you could sell a house for $400,000 or $280, what are you gonna do?
Right.
You're gonna build the
So
$400,000
even all
maximize
the,
your profit, right?
Yeah.
even the people who are building in town aren't
It's still not
building affordable
Affordable
housing.
housing, no.
So that's what I'm thinking. That
Right.
the rules have changed of our market, right? You can't. And I'm
They just
looking
don't
at.
build starter homes at all.
Well, they don't because they don't have to. The market demand is there for the new
Yeah.
builds. So, right, I just did a quick MLS search while we were chatting. The average cost of a new build, single family new construction in the MLS right now is $456,367. The low is $172.
Is that a townhome?
I bet it is. Let me
Yeah,
look here real
I
quick.
bet it is, yeah.
I'm just doing some sorting here. Yeah, it's actually a single family residence, but it's out in the Chateau at Antelope Ridge. So they have the
yeah.
HOA.
High HOAs.
High HOA.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's pretty. We think the market's capped or capping. We don't see inventory position changing much this year.
No.
No. Okay.
I
Interest
mean,
rates possibly rising.
I think
Rising.
inventory will go up in the spring, 'cause people are more likely to sell their homes spring and summer.
I don't think earth-shatteringly so.
But yeah,
I agree with
Exactly.
that.
You know, it's not
exactly.
going to double or something.
Okay. So on to
Yeah.
our topic of the day then, which is, let's do our word of the day. Word of the day.
Word of the day.
Steering. Lori proposed steering as a word of what is that? Does that have to do with my driving ability?
You're driving. You don't have the self-drive car. So
No,
yeah,
not
yeah,
yet.
okay.
Not yet.
It's actually an illegal practice of limiting the housing shown to a certain ethnic group. Is the definition of.
So
I think
why is that
yeah.
illegal?
Why is that illegal?
Well, racial steering, it's basically
Yeah.
you're saying,
It
you fall into this demographic? Let me show you the neighborhood where all those people live.
Right. It violates fair housing.
That's
It
is
does.
that's the
yeah,
leading
that's
question I was going
exactly.
for.
I knew that's where you were going.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Oh, you're the winner now.
I know. I got a good start. Yeah.
So steering. So agents, of course, cannot steer. We can't. If you call an agent up and you say, I don't want to live in this demographic area, the right answer should be, well, I'm sorry, that's a fair housing violation. I can't even entertain
So
that
it goes
conversation.
either way. It can be either the agent themselves trying to steer you, or the person purchasing a house saying, I don't want to live next to X.
Correct.
So, or I don't want to live, they can say, I don't want to live on the south side of town. I'd rather live on the north end of town. But if they're saying things like, I don't want to live next to
X.
X.
I think this is actually a narrow definition
Right.
because
Agreed.
I think it could also be demographics. I don't want to
Yeah.
live around people with little kids.
Yeah.
That's a fair housing
You know,
violation.
fair
Yeah.
housing
Yeah.
violation. Yeah.
Well, it's a fair housing violation for an agent to entertain that,
Exactly.
and to narrow the criteria down
Yeah.
based on,
Right.
on
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Which is a perfect segue into things your agent can't tell you.
Yep.
Yeah. So if a consumer calls up and asks, what are some things we can't tell them?
Where are the good schools? I have kids and I want to know where the good schools are because I want to live there.
So why can't we talk about schools?
It's not for me to judge whether a school is good or not. And what I might think is a really good school, someone else might think is a crummy school. Let's say I'm really into, for example, I was really into Waldorf schools, so I was way into the Waldorf school here in town. So if someone came up to me and said, show me the good schools, I'd be like, the Waldorf school. Whereas someone else who's into like the core curriculum or maybe who is Christian and wants a Christian school for their children or something like that, their definition of a good school is something completely different from mine. And for me to only tell people, go to this school, go to this school, go to this school, I'm literally steering them into where they should live. And who knows if I'm right or not, or what I'm even in my own mind thinks is a good school.
It's subjective.
It's so subjective, exactly.
Schools. What else can't we talk
Crime.
about?
Crime data.
Crime, yep.
Yeah.
Where do we? When somebody asks me that, I always told them to call CSPD or
Right.
check out neighborhoodscout.com.
Neighborhood Scout
Yeah.
or My Neighborhood Update. You can
Yeah.
actually put in an address and see the calls in the last month or
Yeah.
whatever parameter you set.
They go to CSPD or Fountain
Exactly.
Police's
Yep.
website
Yep.
too and see
Yep.
the police blotter. That's
Exactly,
one
and kind of check it out that way.
Greatschools.com is a good one for the schools
Yep, for
too,
schools.
because you can look at test scores. Some people it's all about the test scores. You can look at parent comments, what parents have said about different schools. You can look at what kind of extracurricular activities each of the schools offers. I love that website.
And what website is that?
Greatschools.com.
.org.
Okay.
Is it org, com, org? One of those.
You'll get there one way.
Google it.
Jinx.
Anything else we can't talk about?
I just find it fascinating that there's so much that you guys cannot talk about.
Well,
I do.
It's true.
Well,
it's
yeah,
all
anything
around
that
fair housing. That's the
anything that
serious stuff.
discriminates on sexual orientation, marital status,
Yep.
Which parallels,
Religion.
yeah,
parallels what I have to do. I can't
Gender.
discriminate against anybody as far as lending is
yeah,
concerned.
Yep.
exactly, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
But I always tell people, if you've got a job and good credit, you're getting a house. Yeah.
Yeah, it gets a little more nuanced when we're searching for the houses. People sometimes
Yeah.
forget that.
They're going to try to narrow down what they want, and you can't be specific.
Yeah.
Right.
What
You have
about
to lead them to the website.
what about can we? If somebody says I have a geographical boundaries, can we respect that?
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we can.
I really do think it's more on the consumer, and I think that's what we're trying to get out there is that's on you what neighborhood you want to live in,
Right.
not your realtor.
Yeah,
Do your research.
We simply can't answer some of those
We simply
questions
can't answer
for
the
legal
questions,
reasons, yeah.
and I think one of the most powerful things you can do is drive-bys. Drive through the neighborhood day and night
Right.
and look around, talk to neighbors if they're
Mhm.
outside.
Like go to the websites that you guys are talking
Exactly.
about.
Yep.
Yeah.
You can
As-
go on Facebook and go on different neighborhood websites
Sure.
and talk to people and just ask, hey, do you like this neighborhood? What if you could live anywhere? Where would you live? You
Right.
live in Colorado Springs, and why? And
There's actually a Facebook group on town. Full disclosure, I created it, but don't manage it.
Of course you did.
Well, but I don't manage it actively for this very reason. But it's a resource that it's kind of self-managed now, where called Colorado Springs Schools, where we can crowdsource the question, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And as I'm sitting here thinking about it, Mike, we had a mutual potential client once that a couple of years ago they called. We were actively trying to find them a home. And if I remember correctly, I don't know if you remember this, but they messaged you to fire me because I wouldn't give them a straight answer, they said, on schools.
I don't recall, but I believe that.
Yeah.
Did you fire him by text or?
I would never fire Rob.
Okay.
Oh,
Well,
thanks.
that's good
Yeah.
to know. Yeah.
Well, I subsequently reached out to them and said, it isn't that I can't give you a straight answer, it's that I can't give you an answer. And
Right.
my straight answer is check out Great Schools or Zillow
Yes.
or we didn't have that Facebook group at the time, but yeah.
There's even
yeah.
Walk Score, and I found there's even one called Transit Score if you need to be near public transit. So,
and back to the Waldorf thing. If you say to me,
are you stuck on
I'm
Waldorf?
sorry, I
She's
love
obsessed
Waldorf.
with
and
Waldorf.
She's obsessed
sorry.
with Waldorf.
I'm a school person. I got.
I like the
kids.
salad. I'm sorry, you said it's not the same thing?
Apples in there. It's so
Oh,
sweet.
I'm particular to Caesar salads
Yeah,
myself, but
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, my kids
like
are in a
chicken
Montessori
salad.
school now. But if someone comes to me and says, I want to live by the Waldorf school because my kids are going to go to the Waldorf school and I don't know where Waldorf schools are in town, I can say, oh, the Waldorf school is here. But if you say, I want the good school, that's
different
completely
story.
subjective. If you're very specific and you say, oh, I'm interested in Montessori, I can give you a map and show you where all
Where
the
the
Montessori
Montessori
schools
schools
are
are.
in town.
Yeah.
and then you can choose your geographical area based on that. But if you're just saying where are the good schools, I can't. Sorry.
I would take it a step even further. I would say, what boundary do you want?
Sure.
I'll tell them, we can draw a circle
here's the
around
map.
the school.
Show
What's
me where
your
you want it.
what's your distance? 3,
Yeah.
5, 7 miles, and then that's how I set my searches up. Okay. What about sex offenders? Can we run searches for them?
I thought you couldn't. No, we can't. But
No.
I thought you could do that on CSPD.
You can.
You can still do.
So
Yeah.
if that's
Yeah.
that's a common
Yeah.
request for
Sure.
for folks to ask, and I always refer to them to CSPD's website,
Right.
Megan's Law.
Right.
Any other things we can't really tell them?
Well, there are things we can't discriminate based on: sexual orientation, age. Well, age
It's
is
not a
specific
protected.
to Colorado, isn't it?
Well, so
not a protected class.
there are
Well,
senior
refresh my
communities.
memory.
There are senior communities that are there's an apartment complex, for example, that's
Sure.
only senior community. So if that you can
If they want a 55 or older,
then you
Sure.
then you technically could.
can tell them
obviously
about
set up
that
a search
place,
for
but you can't steer it.
Right.
But it has to be pre-set up that way, the community.
Right.
Right.
You can't self-designate a certain area of town as should only be seniors, right? So
And like a lot of people think, well, why can't you do this? This is silly. You guys are being whatever, too PC. But if you look back throughout history and you look at 50 years ago and someone wanted to buy a house and they were African American and the only neighborhoods the realtor would show them was the African American neighborhoods, it was a problem. And these laws exist for a reason,
Yeah.
so you don't
Yeah.
revert back to that.
Right.
Redlining.
Well,
Yeah.
Redlining is
Yeah.
another, where you're like, this neighborhood is for you, this neighborhood is for you.
There were actually
Um,
covenants set up. I found out after the fact that I lived in a neighborhood in town that had been a segregated neighborhood, and I moved. Impartial. Yeah. When I went to
So
sell the house,
crazy.
the neighbors actually asked me, not to sell to a certain group of people.
Really?
Yeah,
Interesting.
How long
it
ago was
was
that?
pretty. Yeah, about 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it was shocking
It's
to me.
hard to imagine.
Really
that
shocking.
still goes on.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
So-
another realtor buzzword is blockbusting, where a realtor will go into a neighborhood and say, oh, all of the X are moving into this neighborhood. I'm just going to pick a random, all the Palestinians, I don't know, like whatever, are moving into this neighborhood. Your property values are going to go down real quick. They're all coming. You should sell now before those property values drop. And then they get your house for a smoking deal, and it's illegal. And there are tons of fair housing laws surrounding blockbusting, surrounding what was our word of the day? Now I'm blanking. Steering. And it's to protect. It's not just to protect the realtor. It's to protect everyone. And if someone comes to us and asks us to do something that's against the law, and we tell you no, I'm very sorry that I can't help you, but I'm protecting myself in that I'm following the word of the law as it is, and I'm also protecting my community.
word and intent to, and word and intent of the law, and that although we're not lawyers and can't interpret the law, it's
Sure.
just if you wink at me while you're saying sure, you're okay, you find me, then we're still not going to work together. I'm sorry.
Right.
So I had one time someone kind of similar conversation. Talk about service animals real quick. The law says you cannot discriminate against service. They're not pets. They're service animals, right? And so we were in conversations to potentially rent this property, and the individual was telling me, I don't want animals in my house. I said, I get that, but we have, just FYI, service animals are not pets, so we have to honor that. And they said, oh no, I'm telling you, I don't want animals in my house. And I said, I understand, but I'm telling you that service animals are not pets,
Right.
so you have to honor that. And they said, I'm sure you'll find a way, and they sent me a little winky emoticon, and I said,
geez.
nope.
Nope.
I said I just immediately started responding. I will comply with all fair housing laws.
Right.
and they said, okay, I'm sure you'll find a way. I said, no, I will comply with all fair housing laws. And then
Okay.
I didn't get the listing.
And no winky.
Yeah.
emoticon.
Yeah,
I
I
think
didn't
the
get
service
what.
pets thing would be a good episode to do.
We
Because a
should.
lot of people ask about
It's a
that.
confusing
and
subject.
the laws are, yeah.
We should get a lawyer though in on that one. Just
Because
my
none of this is legal advice.
right, correct.
No.
None of it's legal advice. It's just, but also it is especially when you bring in emotional service animals.
Right.
You say is right. Are they pets? Are they covered or are they not? And I've even found blog posts on lawyers' websites. Some say yes, some say no. So it's really
Yeah, I can't find a consensus.
well.
I've looked,
Yeah.
and I don't think there is one. So
I don't think there's consensus. So
Yep.
where do you err? I'd err on the side of allowing them.
That's
So that you don't get in
ADA
trouble.
law, right?
yeah.
And you just mentioned the ADA. There's one of the best legal answers I've ever heard to a lot of the answers to this questions regarding fair housing is it depends.
Yeah.
For example, there's a common perception about 2 heartbeats per room, right? There isn't. That's not a thing. Sometimes there's some folks in town that have been rejected for properties because they have more, 2-bedroom.
I think that's made up.
It is, well, sort of. They have a 2-bedroom listing, but they have 5 family members or 6 family members, and so they've been
Right.
rejected for the application because they have more than 2 heartbeats per room. That is actually, my understanding is, it was in a letter as a proposed guideline from one of the former administrators of the Fair Housing Administration. It was never a rule,
Okay.
but yet, when you dig down into that, the best answer is it depends. It depends on, are you applying the standard fairly? If you allow this family in with more than 2 heartbeats, but you don't allow this one in, now you've just discriminated against them. And
You're-
so you have to, whatever,
Yourself down a bad road.
unless it's black and white, whatever standard, my general rule of thumb, advice as a landlord too, is whatever standard you apply should be applied evenly and in full compliance as best you can with the fair housing laws. So let's talk about what can we tell them? What can we tell them? Well, what's the point of having a realtor if you can't tell anybody all this stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I was just myself.
Yeah. What can we tell them? What's something we can tell somebody?
If they say, I want the good neighborhood, I can say, okay, let's talk about what that means to you. Are you talking about you want a place where the property values are X,
There you go.
or it's this far from a park, or something like that? But if they're saying 0 crime, only this type of people living there, etc., I can't help you, but you can give me specific guidelines that I can follow.
I can show you all the data for a house. I can help you.
Sure.
I can tell you about future and fast pricing trends.
Sure.
Yeah, I can tell you. One of the things I say is I'm here to be an advocate for you and get you the best deal I can on the house. That's my job. Once we identify the house, that's my job, and to make sure you purchase and step through the process from inspections to appraisal.
Your average Joe doesn't know they can't ask you where are the good schools. If I'm moving here from out of state or out of town and I've got little kids, I want to know where the good schools are. And I'm just asking your opinion, and I may not know that you can't tell me. So I feel like it's my job as a realtor to then just let them know. So I'm technically not allowed to tell you that because of fair housing. However, let me show you some websites where you can find out for yourself. And then you get back to me and let me know what areas you want to look at.
Or crowdsource the question on Colorado Springs schools
There you go.
on Facebook. Or 411 for the 719, or word of mouth.
Yep.
Any number of forums
Yeah,
that
there's
are out there.
tons of places where you
No.
can find advice from other people.
But it will still be subjective.
Yes.
So
And you will also get lots of advice you didn't
free
want.
advice you didn't want. Yes.
But I find, especially 411 for the 719, when I ask a question on there, I get 90% of people trying to advise me things that I didn't even ask, and 10% really great answers. So I just filter through. I go, look, I got the answer to the thing I needed. And all
There you
y'all other people can just keep your
It's kind of like reviews on
opinions to yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Amazon reviews.
Amazon reviews.
Yeah.
People generally only make a review if they have something
If it's negative.
to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or reviews on books.
So we can-
where
we can-
it ruins it for you because
Spoilers.
Yeah.
it happens.
So we can talk about pricing of houses. We can talk about future pricing of the houses based on static data or past static data.
Sure.
We can inform somebody about the process. We can talk to them about closing costs, sellers concessions. We can be the advocate on this side. We just can't speak to anything that violates fair housing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Indeed.
Anybody have anything to add on that topic? Okay.
No. Mike has learned something.
I
new.
have learned quite a bit.
He did not. Yeah.
We've
he did.
educated
Yeah.
him today.
I think I rambled
job
on
is
quite
done.
enough.
No, totally okay.
That's totally unusual for you.
What?
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 Let's talk about interest rates real quick. Mike, we got the magic 8 ball.
Magic 8
So
ball.
what
Interest
are on the way up.
what interest
What's
rates
the
going to do?
question?
Will interest rates continue to rise?
And the answer is
Signs point to yes.
whoa.
Ooh.
So the
To be
8 ball.
honest,
Eight Ball backs it up, which
Yep.
the Fed has actually said we're
Yeah.
going to do this, right?
Yeah, it's I foresee 4 3/4 by the end of the year.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's my guess.
Which
Haven't
they
seen
were
that number in a
3.75 last month, right? Or ish. When were they 3.75?
About 2 months ago, last month was probably more like 3.875. Now we're at 4 underneath.
So
If you have really good credit, we can get you to 3.875 still, but
So I don't want to say I
That's
called
the
it,
wrong
but I've been calling for a 1% rise for a while, and so if that trend
If you call
continues.
for it long enough, it'll happen.
It'll
eventually,
happen.
Rob.
There you
Yeah. So we were. Did we talk about that in one of these podcasts about black swan events? So are you familiar with the term black swan?
Just from the movie.
Black
Just
Swan events.
Yeah. So a black swan event is something. For example, in the last housing
Natalie
crisis.
Portman shows up at your door.
well, it's
Sorry.
not-
That's
not-
all
it's
I
not
can
the-
think of.
It's not,
yeah,
it's not the ballerina. It's
Okay.
a
Okay.
a
That
black
was
swan
scary.
event is something an outlier that happens. For example, in the last housing crisis,
Mhm.
it was oil prices spiked, and that actually toppled the house of cards.
Okay.
So that's called a black swan event, or a random, heaven forbid, terrorist attack or a random event that happens is
Mhm.
generally called a black swan event, right? So I've been predicting a black swan event, but even just making those for predicting a black swan event, those 5 words are themselves a misnomer of sorts because you can't predict a black swan event. So anyway, I thought that was.
You're predicting a Black Swan event. Is it a specific one, or
Well,
are you just saying one?
there will be
There will
one.
be one, right? And
Yeah,
so,
that goes back to the interest rates will rise 1%.
Right.
I
Well-
mean, if you wait long enough,
it will
anything
happen,
can
right?
happen,
But
right?
I'm just saying,
I think we're actually there though.
I think we are. It's in it. Okay. All right. Okay. Moving on. Anybody have any book or website recommendations?
I wish I did, but I'm just reading fiction lately.
Yeah, actually I do.
You know,
Sometimes you got to take a mental break and just, yeah.
it's not.
Oh,
Yeah,
Okay.
true.
I
Do
just
that.
started reading Warren Buffett's 3 favorite books, A Guide to the Intelligent Investor. So
Okay. That's pretty good.
I recommend that.
Okay. I'm reading Adaptive Markets by Andrew Lowe right now, and he's got a quote in there that I think bears relevance to our topics here. And the quote is this: Academia, industry, and public policy have assumed rational economic behavior for so long that we've forgotten about the other aspects of human behavior, aspects that don't fit as neatly into a mathematically precise framework. That's Andrew Lowe. So his Adaptive Market, it's a treatise, if you will, on we've spent the last, 5, 10, 15 years, 20 years maybe, applying mathematical models to our markets and saying, if input X, Y, and Z will produce, A, B, and F, right? But that removes the human element from all of these predictive analytics, right? There are outliers. There are random presidential election wins that influence events.
Introduce chaos.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And so not to get political at all, but there was an interesting comment I heard in a podcast the other day where talking about chaos, for example, let's just leave it at that, chaos.
Uh-huh.
That was the norm 25 years ago. But the last 25 years has been a pretty relatively static period of time for American economic growth. American politics has been, and so are we just reverting to the norm? Anyway, kind of interesting. So related to housing, we know interest rates are predicted to go up, and we'll see where that takes us. But any other recommendations?
Well, I'm reading a really boring book about teaching your children to be financially responsible, and I won't even say the name of it because it's not great.
How do you
So
teach
that's
it?
It's a not recommendation.
It's a non-recommendation,
Yes, there you
so
go.
maybe next week I'll have something better.
How do you teach your kids to be financially responsible?
Well, no, the book itself is just really obvious. There's nothing exciting. There's no pictures, man. There's not even a graph.
Aw.
Nothing. Come on. No,
Dude.
it's not because there's no pictures. It's just it gives you 2 paragraphs worth of really great advice over 100 pages. So I was just like, come on, just skimming through this thing. Get to the point. So I won't recommend it.
Dave Ramsey's
Keep looking.
Financial
Keep
Peace
looking.
University has a kids version.
Okay.
Like for 6 and 8-year-olds.
For kids. I'm not sure the age group.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen that. I just
Yeah.
my kids are itty, so I was just
You're gonna
more. My thing was more like teaching them to be responsible and teaching them to, when they get their allowance, to save some, to donate some to charity, and to spend some, because you don't want to save it all. That's boring. You don't
Right.
want to spend it all. Then you're poor forever. how to set it aside. Personally, I always tell my kids they get $5 a week allowance, and they do probably $10 a week worth of chores. And then I tell them if they want to put it in the bank, I will double it, because a penny saved is a penny earned. And so they'll put like $2 in
That's
the
nice.
bank, and that turns into $4, and then they get the other $3 to spend on whatever.
One
Or
thing
walk down to 7-Eleven, get a Slurpee or something.
one thing we do is with Sam, and Sloan has the same opportunity, but we have bought a book of crossword puzzles, and that's how they can earn extra income if they complete a crossword puzzle without cheating.
Nice.
And then they can they can earn $1 a crossword puzzle.
I pay my kids for books.
Yeah,
If
there you go.
they're like, I want to read this big old fat chapter book, oh well, that one's worth $5.
There you
Or
go.
I want to
Yeah.
read this little tiny book, I'll give you a quarter for that one.
Sam will spend 6 hours doing
Yes.
10 crossword puzzles, then
To make some money.
and then 6 hours and 1 minute later she's like, let's go to Walmart.
If it costs me
No, I tell her-
$5
I tell her,
to
"Bud, if
get
you
my
save that
kid
money."
to spend a week
You should
reading
go
a
with
big
her,
old fat
yeah.
chapter
Double
book,
whatever she puts on.
and is like
I like the double
excited
thing.
to
That's
is
awesome. It's like early
yeah.
401k.
Yeah, if you're,
So
if
what's
you're,
your
you're-
interval for doubling? How long?
Oh, it's not an interval. It's if they want to put it into their bank account,
Okay.
I will double it.
How long do they
How
have to
long do
hold
they
it?
have to hold it in? Because
Oh, no, it's-
Do they need to vest it
No,
before you?
Once it goes
we-
in there, it's a black hole.
They can't.
or is
they,
it like a Roth IRA where you can withdraw?
no, because if they could withdraw it and spend it right away, they just put it in and immediately spend their $10.
Well, they spend the fire, yeah.
No, I let them use it if they want to get a special Christmas present for someone.
Okay.
Or if it's a birthday party and I'm like $40 is your limit for presents, and they're like, but I really want to get them this $50 thing. I'll say, well, if you want to make up the other $10, they can take it out of your bank account. So they can spend it here and
Okay.
there, but it's not
It's
like
not
a.
frivolous money.
I'm kind of like the key master of their bank account. So mom
that's the
decides
way-
whether you get to spend that money or not.
Okay.
And we've talked about, because I have a 20-year-old as well, so we've talked about saving for college and saving for a car, and they watched her kind of do it. I'm like, that was my practice kid. Now we're really
No, we've got it down.
Time to get
There you
serious, right?
we're taking down to business now. We're not doing that again.
It's awesome to teach
Yeah.
kids that. Mine all got a bank account at 16, you know,
Nice.
and
Yeah.
then they all got a job, and that's how they learn to be responsible
Mhm.
Yep.
at
Right.
16.
I could talk about this forever.
I
Well,
tell
we should
you.
do it.
We should do a special, just you and I.
We should do a little TBD micro podcast, or what did you guys call that one the other day? A
Man.
she-cast or something? You gonna do a girl real estate? Okay. Oh, this has been TBD, your Colorado Springs real estate podcast.
Thanks for hanging in there without
Yep.
rambling.
Yeah, it's an informed rambling, right? There you go. Okay. Y'all have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.